Guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is a show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And before I get started, at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, and in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. Let's get started. There's a ton of books this week, leading into the holiday spirit. Usually, the holiday time, you don't get as many comics, so it's kind of crazy that they're kind of squeezing so many books during this time. I will have reviews, hopefully, during the holiday season, but obviously not on Christmas and New Year's Eve. It will most likely be the Thursdays when those books come out, so look forward to that. Moving on to this week's books. Number 17 for me is the TVA issue 1, new series from Marvel, a book that I feel like is fitting more for the MCU than needs to happen in the Marvel universe. And that's honestly been a pet peeve of mine for a while with Marvel, is I feel like the newest titles, they kind of try to fit for the MCU. Instead of just telling an organic story that is meant to be for these characters, you have Spider-Gwen on a completely different adventure in her actual series that references the TVA in issue 1 and hasn't really touched that until now that she's in this TVA series, where I feel like these characters don't really belong together, and maybe that's the point, but I didn't really feel the chemistry, and I just don't feel the need for this book in the Marvel Universe. But hopefully for people that have been enjoying Loki and stuff like that, there's a book to pick up. Moving on to number 6, that's 2.5 stars. Moving on to number 16, which is The Challengers of the Unknown, issue 1. This is a personal preference thing. I don't know anything about these characters, and I don't know if this issue did enough for me to be like, I need to read more. I think the artwork could have been stronger, and I think the hook of the book honestly happens at the end, and for me, that was a bit too late for a week where I got 17 books. I kind of need to shorten the pull list a little bit, where we get to see Darkseid and his anomalies are being affected to these Watchtower cops. And that's the story that's revealed at the end, and I was like, oh, I kind of wish that happened in the beginning, because that's actually a really cool pitch. And I just didn't really feel anything for the characters. There wasn't that really big character moment for me to feel attached to this one. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 16. All right, number 15 is Power Rangers Prime, issue 2. I felt like this issue did a good job at introducing new characters like Rita Repulsa, or I guess that's like her daughter, I guess, but or is a new Rita Repulsa. So we get to see that character, and we get to see this new team interact with each other. But unlike Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, where you kind of know everybody by name and know their backstory, it's a little harder to get into for me for this issue, because I have to kind of like relearn the characters to be like, oh yeah, they're from there, or this is a new character. So I think that's going to take a little time to build that chemistry, but I do like this new direction, and I like the world they're building, and I like we're getting to see new Power Rangers stuff. So giving that one 3 stars, and that is number 15. Moving on to number 14, which is Nightwing, issue 121. And this series right now, in general, is not bad, but I also just don't feel like it reinvents the wheel in any way. It just feels like the same old we've been getting with Nightwing. There just isn't that pop for me with this book, and I want a little bit more. I want an exciting character moment or exciting twist, and you got this Robin-esque story that's going on, but it just hasn't really made me feel like I need to have this one on my pull list. As a Nightwing fan, I do want to give it more of a chance, but it just is middle of the road for me right now. And even the artwork kind of just feels like that classic 2000s Nightwing, but it also doesn't really feel like it distinguishes from that classic 2000 Nightwing. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 14. Moving on to number 13, which is Wonder Woman, issue 16. This doesn't really progress the plot that much. If you like Detective Chimp, you'll enjoy this issue. He investigates a little bit more about the villain, but mostly it's just Wonder Woman talking about her daughter and letting her meet her mom. And that's kind of it. It just doesn't really progress the Wonder Woman side of stuff as much as I want to, and it's kind of classic Tom King in that way that I tend not to like with his stories. I like when they kind of move a little bit more and not stay in one place for like 20 issues and just tell the same story in a different way. So artwork, though, was really good. Love the art for this book. Giving this one 3 stars. Not my favorite. Moving on to number 12, which is Batman and Santa Claus Silent Night, The Return, issue 4. This is the penultimate issue. It's just fun Christmas story with Santa Claus in the DC universe. They're fighting the same villain. There's not much past that. There's a little bit with Wally's daughter, and Wally's dead in the end. You're like, whoa, what's gonna happen there? But for the most part, it's just like your fun action book that actually has really solid artwork for a weekly series. So it just depends if you're looking for that to cleanse your palate or not. So giving that one 3 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is The Moon is Following Us, issue 4. I like this issue probably the most so far. I enjoyed seeing the more grounded story of how do we save our daughter? Maybe there's not a chance, and going through every boundary that they can. I like the mystery with the grandma/mother, but I also feel like there's something more to be said, especially thematically, about losing your daughter, the chance of losing your daughter. I just don't feel like this book has hit yet. And I'm curious if the book will hit. And as someone who doesn't love the fantasy side or the other style that's not Warren Johnson, that kind of takes me out of it a little bit as well. So giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Titans, issue 18. I really love the colors for this one, and I like how attached it is to everything that's been going on in DC Comics as they move into the Titan Tower and they stay away from the Watchtower. Donna trying to be this leader and everyone kind of being on a different page because of it. The thing that does slow this down is honestly the villain goes through the motions at that point, but I really do like the commentary about the overall DC universe, and I like the art style. I thought it was good, and I like the coloring a lot for this one. I think this book has a lot of potential. So giving that 3.5 stars, and then is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is the Powerpuff Girls issue 6. Another kind of palate cleanser for the week. If you're just looking for a fun Powerpuff Girl story that kind of reinvents the wheel a little bit, go check this one out. I think the artwork is really good for this. I like that it does feel like a little bit more of a modern take on the Powerpuff Girls. I like that there's different, maybe not villains, but different characters that show up in this issue in particular, where you get to see Bubbles' favorite television show come to life, and of course a villain is behind that, and how Bubbles kind of gets through that. And again, it's just a fun, very good palette cleanser. I love having this book on the top of my pull list, like the first book to read to kind of jump into the books. I think that's a great, like, all ages thing to have. So that is number 9 for me. Moving on to number 8, which is Deadpool issue 9. I've been really enjoying Deadpool. I think this could be number 1 if I was a bigger Deadpool fan, but as someone who's a very casual Deadpool fan, I'm enjoying the ride. I like seeing his daughter. I like learning about her. There's a mystery that's kind of building with her mom in this issue, and then of course Deadpool comes back to life. So now we're actually going to see them team up. It wasn't that long that he was dead, and I think that's going to really, really help the book even more, because then we'll have them both interacting with a bit more. You know, I hate when a death lasts so long where you're like, you know he's coming back. Why not just bring him back at this point? So overall, giving that 3.5 stars. Artwork is also really solid, and I think they're really creating a cool supporting cast here and a cool built-in world as well. Moving on to number 7, which is Absolute Batman issue 3. This is a little lower than previous issues because I do think it's more of a build up point A to point B issue, and a lot's honestly going on where not a lot is going on because of it. You got Alfred, you got Catwoman, you got his mom, you got villains. There's just a lot going on in this issue where the overall theme is, how do you make Batman a bigger hero? Is he gonna be a name? Can you save everybody? Like, is his mom really gonna be safe? She can't stop living her life just because Batman wants to save her. And we get little glimpses of his past to kind of deal with that trauma, and how is that trauma different now that both his parents are not dead and he didn't have Alfred. You get a little bit of his connection with him and Alfred, which was interesting, and it was cool to kind of see Alfred's words of wisdom as a different version of that character. So there's definitely a lot of pockets that I enjoyed about this issue. I just think issue 1 and 2 had a little bit more of a focus. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Green Lantern, Green Arrow, World's Finest Special issue 1. This is just a fun team-up book. If you are looking for an action-packed series that's like a Lost episode with amazing artwork, pick this up. It's really just about their friendship as they fight Deathstroke before he was Deathstroke. That really is just the issue. There's nothing more or less than that, but sometimes that's all you kind of need from a team-up book. In the end, you also get a Flash team-up that kind of ties together everything, and if you're a big Jeremy Adams fan, you might want to see him write the Flash again. If you're looking for a fun book to add, I would add this, but also if you're looking for a game-changing book, I think you could also skip it all at the same time. So it really depends on what flavor you're looking for this week. So giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Plastic Man No More, issue 4. Honestly, a really emotional end where we get to see Plastic Man and his son interact. He's dying, and you really get to see where that relationship is going and how hard of a time Plastic Man has had, especially as a father and also just a Justice League member. And I liked where we saw here his son end up by the end, and really get to see the problems that his father had to go through, all while there's like kind of a glimpse in the end of like maybe Plastic Man's actually alive. But I thought it was an interesting look at their relationship and a character that usually does not get much screen time, especially this much emotional screen time. So giving that one 4 stars, and that's number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is The Question All Along Watchtower, issue 2. I really like this issue. Alex Segura is such a good detective noir writer, and it really shows with this, where we get to see the Question actually really live within this Watchtower, which obviously has been a big part of All In, and a lot of the books have been tying into the idea that everyone's a Justice League member and that the Justice League has really expanded, this Justice League Unlimited element. So we get to see, obviously because it's so big, that there's actually mysteries on the Watchtower and how that relates to maybe Renee's personal life with Batwoman, all while you really are tying in, who's this big bad, what's going on in the Watchtower. But I like just the personal element. I think a lot of noir stories, they tend to keep you at an arm's length because they have to be the outsider. And here she tries to be the outsider, but she is extremely connected to all these people. And I enjoyed that element. And I thought the artwork was solid. And if you're looking for something that's just different and something that's focusing on someone that's not Batman and Superman, that actually progresses the story of not just Renee's story, but also the bigger DC universe, I'd go check this one out. I'd give that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Lilith, issue 2. I'm really enjoying this one. I love this as a character piece. Also, the art is just tremendous. If you like vampires, go check this one out. It's Lilith, who's this, maybe call her an evil vampire, and she just wants to go back home. She's manipulating people to do it. Maybe she'll get closer to these people that she's trying to manipulate. And we get a little bit of a backstory with her past, and she gets into this conundrum with this other vampire guy that I thought was interesting. But overall, I liked it. I like the vibe of this book. I think you jump into the world really quickly, and you feel like you know these characters all by issue 2. So I just really like it as a character piece, all while you are building that mystery of where does she come from and why does she want to go back, and how she ended up here. So giving that one 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is The Tin Can Society, issue 4. I love this book. I just think it's such a great character-driven series. And this issue in particular focuses on our main character's sidekick, or the guy who dies sidekick, who used to be a football player, and how he ended up in the place of being disabled but in a different way than our main character, and how that affected his life, and maybe the murder mystery all along. And I like that as you learn more about these players, you get closer and closer figuring out, okay, so who did murder this guy? Is he a bad person? Is he actually a hero? And that's something I really, really like about this series, is that they unravel mystery through character, which I think is always the best mysteries. And the artwork is really, really great. I love the kind of like watercolor style to this, and I think it really works. So overall, giving that 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is also the topic of the video, and that is Ultimate Spider-Man issue 12. It is marking the end of the year for Ultimate Spider-Man, and the question of, is Ultimate Spider-Man the best Marvel series? And for me, by far. I think the reason for me, and why I think DC has been doing a little bit better of a job this year, and this is coming from a Marvel fan, and more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan, and the reason being is that I think DC just feels more connected. It also feels like a lot of series have purpose and are charging through to something that maybe has a cliffhanger or has a big story twist or a big character moment that I think Ultimate Spider-Man does a really good job at, that maybe some of the other Marvel books could really do a little bit more of. I think a lot of times, at least with this year's Marvel books, I've been just seeing a lot of the same thing of like, okay, I've seen that cliffhanger, I've seen that action scene before, like do something with the character. Blow my mind that I think Superman, let's give that example in DC Comics, has done maybe a little better job at, where you get to see, classic storytelling from Superman, and then, Lois gets these powers from Zod, or Lex Luthor is trying to be a good person. It's telling these stories you've already known, but going a little farther with them that I want to see with Marvel, and what I've really seen with Ultimate Spider-Man. So let's get into why I think Ultimate Spider-Man is the best title on stands. And this issue proves it for me, where it really is a talking heads book, but it's character instead of exposition explaining things. So it's just a Christmas dinner with the Watsons and Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. We get to see these little conversation pieces. First of all, we have Mary Jane, who has a sister here, and her sister and her are estranged, and you're like, okay, why is that happening? And that mystery builds throughout the issue until that conversation explodes of like, you shouldn't have been with Peter, he was a loser, but actually I lost my husband because he wasn't a good guy, I ended up divorcing him, and that gets revealed through an argument. Then you in the background, you got this like Uncle Ben, Aunt Mary, and Mary Jane's mother having this love triangle, maybe this love square with J. Jonah Jameson. And I really love even the smaller moments where J. Jonah Jameson kind of acts like an uncle to Peter's son, and they get to talk about just life, like how do you live life, how do you get the girl or the guy, how do you do that, and they have this conversation and about J. Jonah Jameson's book, all while you have this big twist ending with Peter being Venom this whole entire time, leading into one of the biggest villains you could have for Spider-Man and one of the biggest arcs for Spider-Man, Kraven the Last Hunt. And you're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming at all. Even though I knew Kraven the Last Hunt was coming, I didn't know it was going to happen that way. And that's such a cool cliffhanger that ties into the superhero stuff. You get great character work with not just your lead, you get it with Mary Jane and the family. And with great artwork too, a lot of great emotion that I think I want to see more from other Marvel books, and why I've been enjoying maybe the X-Men side of Marvel a little bit more. Like books like Exceptional X-Men have been on my top because it puts character first, and those characters are allowed to grow. And I think that's a big important step that I think DC has been doing a little bit more than Marvel this year, and why Ultimate Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel book and my favorite book of the week as well. That is a 5-star book for me. I loved every second of it. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite books were this week. Last week's book was Ultimate Year 1, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.